Let's be brutally honest right now. That's a big question.
I'm looking for someone who doesn't want to go to base camp, but they want to go to the very top.
Whether it's here, India, New York.
Civilization was born at happy hour.
That's what wins. That's what stands out. That's what people are interested in. That's what I want to know. The Hospopreneurs Podcast with James Henderson. Hello and welcome to episode 112 of the Hospopreneurs Podcast. Tim Hyde is the CEO and co-founder of SWAN Systems, a Perth-based agtech company that enables irrigators to optimize their water and nutrient applications to improve yields, reduce costs, and conserve resources. With extensive experience across major horticultural and agricultural groups as a grower and consultant, Tim has gained a deep knowledge of the issues that irrigators face on a daily basis, and now through SWAN Systems heads a team of irrigation experts throughout Australia to fulfill their vision of becoming the global industry leader in irrigation and nutrient management software. Hello and welcome to the show, Tim.
Hi, James. Thanks for having me.
Tim, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today. I'm looking forward to getting into the interview. But as you know, the first question that I like to ask on the program is a crazy hospitality story or exceptional hospitality experience. Have you got something that you'd like to share for the beginning of the episode today?
Thanks, James. I think my experience would lean towards traveling through the US, really, and the levels of hospitality that a lot of the restaurants have over there is usually fairly outstanding compared to a lot of other countries.
What is it about that US service that really jumps out at you and delivers above and beyond to stand out as exceptional?
I think it's more than likely their incentivized scheme. I think, a pretty significant proportion of their wages comes as bonuses. So that, I guess, drives productivity and really sort of drives customer satisfaction. So that would be at the heart of all that sort of exceptional customer service.
And there is a lot of contention around the tip system in the US, people fighting to have a minimum wage too and remove the tip system. So I wonder if that will affect the standard of service that people receive. Very interested to see how that evolves. But thank you for bringing that up as the first point in the episode. Tim, I know you struggled to get a story there for the crazy story, but it says a lot, especially that at the moment, we can't even go to many restaurants and bars during COVID. So thinking back to that time, it is a challenge even for myself. We're both at home. We're doing this over video instead of doing it in person. So thank you for sharing that experience in the US with us. Tim, I'd like to know why you do what you do. What is it fundamentally that really drives you to do what you do?
Both the founders of our business and I evolved out of farming enterprises. So we had careers in farming, and then that evolved into a consulting business, and then that's evolved into a technology business, a software business. And ultimately, I think our buzz is getting satisfaction from a customer using our system or getting some incredible yields or growing fruit that produces amazing wine. I mean, we're scientists by trade, and I think having a technical outcome for our customers is what sort of drives us. And there's nothing better than seeing a customer absolutely satisfied with their product you've created and getting real value from that.
You've obviously had an interesting journey going from a very technical background to then working with your two other co-founders to sell things as well. And I'd like to know how you've gone through that process and how you decided with some scientific partners who was going to be more customer facing. And obviously you went through a consulting route prior to this, but how did you evolve into those roles? And tell us a bit about the inception of the company.
So I guess it really came, we had a major client when we were consulting, and what we really found was that when we really paid attention to precision management, that not only did we get the best returns for that business, but we actually were more environmentally sustainable. Any risk to the environment was reduced significantly. So I guess on one hand, it was increasing sort of productivity, and the other hand was, wow, if we do that and we do it precisely, look at what we're going to do. We're really reducing our risk to any environmental harm we're going to cause. So that was sort of how we sort of got to shaping up the business as it is. And there's three founders in our business. I think we're really lucky. We've sort of got really unique skill sets. One of the founders looks after the business side of it. One of the founders does the product and development, and one of the founders does sales and marketing. So we've got really unique skill sets. We look after different parts of the business, and we're just amazing. We work really well together, and we enjoy it every day. So we are very blessed like that.
And that's led you to work with some incredible and well-known businesses around as well. Which of your clients you now work with might listeners be familiar with?
We do lots with the wine grape sector. There's names in Western Australia, a Fogarty Wine Group. We work with Pernod Ricard internationally, Treasury Wine Estate. So we've got a selection in the wine grape sector, which we're fairly proud of. But we also work with a lot of corporate entities made of the US, a lot of almond farms. We've got half a dozen research projects across Australia. So we really do work with multiple enterprises. And then, of course, we've got customers that are in the what we call public open space or turf. So all the parks around the city of Melbourne are run with our system. We do schools in South Australia. So we've actually got a really, really diverse sort of customer list. And the value they get out of our products is quite different for each sort of sector. But yeah, it's a very diverse list.
So what does irrigation actually look like for various groups? I'm coming in as someone who doesn't know much about irrigation at all. It's not my world, it's yours. And I'd love to know what that looks like for different clients of yours. What sort of operation is involved to actually irrigate?
Well, generally speaking, the home gardener or there's a school with a school label, they'll have a box on the wall and the box will say, I want to turn my sprinklers on for half an hour every day. And we call that the sort of set and forget management strategy. What we're doing is really trying to put some science behind that and look at the weather patterns, look at how dry the oval is, look at what the forward weather coming, if there's rain coming, and we can use satellite imagery to see the quality of the turf. So we want to make sure it's nice and green. And if it's dry, it's hard for the kids and they can injure themselves. So what we're doing is trying to make the operator's life easy by having a look at all these massive data sets and then apply the right amount of water at the right time for the right quality of turf. The principles of precision irrigation have been around for a while, but it's more the practice of it, and that's the void we're trying to fill. We're trying to fill the void between all these massive data sets. And the City of Melbourne is another case where they've got 164 parks, and keeping an eye on 164 parks is actually a really, really comprehensive job, and we're trying to make that easy.
And I noticed that living in Melbourne, I'm back up in Brisbane now, but living in Melbourne, they have some incredible parks. And so you're looking after some of those parks as well. And you mentioned the data there is massive. So what sort of data are you actually looking at to process? You touched on that just there before. What sort of data and how much data are you processing to get the sort of information required to essentially create a set and forget system for these businesses and government organizations to have that precision irrigation for a set and forget system? So that's wild. You must be processing crazy amounts of data. What sort of information are we talking about here?
So we use the water flow meter data. So we actually need to know how much water went onto a park at a particular time. We use what they call soil moisture probes, and that gives us an indication of the soil moisture status. We use the Bureau of Meteorology's forecast weather. They've got forecast weather on a 3 kilometre by 3 kilometre grid across Australia. We use their own weather stations to ground truth the forecast weather data. We use satellites to tell us how green the turf is and how healthy it is and if something's going wrong. We can use drones and we can have drone imagery also. And then also we're a little bit unique, so we monitor the nutrients in the water. So often when there's recycled water being used, we'll analyse the water analysis and have that so we can actually know what sort of elements are going on for the field or the park in terms of nutrients. So there's a whole heap of data sets there, and I'm not quite sure in terms of total number, but there's literally hundreds of thousands of calculations going on every day because at 164 parks, we're essentially running a bank balance for how wet they are and also what sort of nutrients or fertilisers have been put on. So there's lots of things going on. And then over the top of that, you've got the complexities of some parks, they might be high usage, so they're really green, so they're high input than a park that's a passive park, and that passive park might not require the inputs to maintain the turf level at a different level. So there's lots of sort of moving parts, and I think it's a really precise sort of management system specifically for a public open space.
And so managing that, is that all in real time, or are there some other tests you've got to do at different periods? And how much of that is actually that you can draw that in real time and just pull that data immediately?
We have got some data come in real time, but generally we wrap it up and do a daily forecast. So we're what we call enterprise software. So we're about planning for the coming week or planning for tomorrow. So we're not so much looking real-time data or real-time rainfall. We're sort of saying the next day, okay, we had 15 millimetres of rainfall in that park. The one down the road only had 10, and how's that going to affect what the irrigation requirement is for the coming week?
What was it that really made you passionate about irrigation? Was there something there that jumped out early on, or did you grow up around it? What was it that made you move into this world?
I actually come from the Riverland in the sort of Asia region, so I had a bit of an exposure with the cropping up over there when I was young, and I went and received a science degree in irrigation and horticulture from Adelaide University. So I think my career pathway was probably chosen when I decided to do that university topic.
Fair. Obviously, you grew up in that region as well. Something that would have made sense to you would have been something that you'd been discussing with peers growing up. What have you seen change in this world since moving into it? And you've obviously worked in it for a long time from a few different angles. What have you seen that's shaped quite differently that maybe you wouldn't have even expected to evolve into the way that it is?
There's been lots of data around at a farm level or park level or government agency for a long time. And I think that using that data in a more suitable way for operators to achieve their outcomes and being a little bit more holistic, I think has only come through the creation of the cloud concept where you can put data into a cloud. So we can pull data from 60 different brands of devices. And it's only since their data became available in the cloud could we access that for that next tier of sort of management. I think probably cloud functionality has been one of the biggest steps or biggest leaps in terms of technology adoption in our space.
What's that facilitating? What's that going to allow you to do moving forward?
So it means we can work with data partners, we call them, to access data that traditionally we wouldn't have been able to get to. So you might have had all the same devices across an enterprise, but until, let's call it the City of Melbourne, until the City of Melbourne put all their data on cloud-based systems, we actually couldn't access that for that extra little bit of that value add in terms of data interpretation.
As an application, what's that going to mean? Greener parks, it's going to be lush, it's going to be, obviously for a vineyard, maybe it's more yield. Is that something that is going to be impacted by this sort of increase in technology and cloud data?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one, James. It's really specific to a sector. The wine grape sector look at maintaining canopy and fruit quality. So they're actually not interested in yields. Where the almond group, almonds and citrus and cotton, say, are interested in really maximising growth. The schools, we did a project with South Australian Water last year where they interrogated the data across 14 schools and parks in Adelaide, and the average saving there was 30%. And there's actually a scientific paper out now that sort of backs it up when they looked at the data. So, the savings in probably the turf sector are really defined savings of minimum 20 or 30%. And that's quite different from optimising in agriculture where you might overwater in one month but underwater another month. So it's sort of horses for courses. But the biggest benefits in the future, we believe, are the public open space sector where really material benefits can be achieved in savings. I mean, if you took 30% water savings across schools in Adelaide, I think it's something like a $5 million savings. So it's really material benefits.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it means they can irrigate more sites as well. So that's great to hear. And it's an obvious or salient benefit to that increase in technology as well.
It's a saving, but it's also a better quality turf for the children. So it's safer, easier. It's not hard. A dry bit of turf goes like concrete. So there's sort of social benefits, the environmental benefits, but also financial benefits through not wasting water.
I hadn't considered that, so thank you for bringing that one up as well. What changes do you want to see take place in the industry? There might be a conversation that you're having about this at the moment, but what is it that you want to change?
I think it's always got to be evolution and not revolution. I think we've got a new product offer. So we're a new, what they call a category. So I think having people become aware of our offer and the benefits to the business or their school oval is something that's quite slow. I think there's got to be a material change in government's attitude towards technology. There's some great stuff out there. And I think government have got such a key role to help some new tech get started, and they're often too conservative. So I think governments have got this amazing ability to help or trial new technologies in different sectors, and they could do a lot to assist that, but they're very risk adverse. And I think if they had an attitude of, listen, if that doesn't work and the tech doesn't suit us, then we've wasted $20,000 and let's move on. But as it is now, they're very risk adverse and they haven't sort of got that attitude. And a lot of countries like Israel have got these amazing government-backed startup funds, and they really will try new tech when it's available, but be prepared that not everything's going to be a winner. And I think that's a cultural thing where you learn more from a failure than a win. And I think we've got to get that into our government organisations.
You mentioned, Tim, that you've got a unique offering and you're going through a capital raise at the moment. So tell us about that process and how you've gone about delivering your own unique value through this business.
In terms of the capital raise, we've knocked on a lot of doors. They say you've got to kiss a lot of frogs, and working with interested parties, VC funds or the family offices or the corporate advisors that are interested in this space. We have got a really unique story. Our software is enterprise, which makes it a little bit more complex. So generally a longer sales cycle, but we have never ever lost a customer. So on one hand, we've got this amazing story that environmentally, production-wise for agriculture, the city of Melbourne got these great test cases, we've got some great customers, but transferring that into or getting the story right and getting the leverage and the runway of sort of good news for whether it's our shareholders or whether it's our potential customers. And it doesn't happen overnight, and it can be a slow journey, but we're certainly very happy with our success to date.
Fantastic. How have you handled competitors in this space, and what does the environment of irrigation companies look like in terms of your market?
In terms of competitors, we don't really consider anyone a competitor because I think a third of our service, we're enterprise software with support. And you look at cars, some people like a Holden, some people like a Ford, and some people like a Mercedes-Benz. We just try and pick customers that are customer fit for us and work with them to get value. We actually don't really get too wrapped up in a competitive environment. We know that we can work with a customer to get real value out of it, and we'll do our absolute best to make sure that we do drive value for their business. So we're not really regard anyone as a competitor because we want to provide a tailored system to a suitable customer.
An interesting answer there. And I do find a lot of guests go down a road where they're looking at it from a very positive perspective. Competition can be good when it's around, but an answer similar to yours is very much a stick to your lane philosophy. It's like, we're good at this thing, so we're doing this thing. Sometimes people go even more boldly and say no one can do it like we can do it because we're us and no one can be us. So that's another way that I've heard that same philosophy described there. So thank you for sharing your thoughts there, Tim. Who tells you when you're wrong?
We've got a wonderful open culture in our business where no one's ever shy of telling someone that they think they might need to reconsider something or be wrong or right. But that's part of a wonderful culture in our business where we discuss everything in detail. And if someone is wrong, no matter who they are, then they can get pulled up. And I think it's fundamentally a very important aspect of having a successful business.
And so how do you foster that culture and allow people to be able to express themselves freely?
Always ask why, always challenge. It can be done in a way that's not rude or it's not intimidating, but why? Why is that decision being made? It's just so important to drive productivity and question everything you do. Nothing you do. The whole business system or your systems behind the business should evolve over time, and challenging that every day is part of a great philosophy.
A lot of interviews at some point in more recent times have brought up the coronavirus, and I don't even think we've mentioned it once, which is great. We've managed to avoid it. I am going to make one quick point because we haven't discussed it. How have you been affected? Have things been positive, negative? Some businesses have really prospered while many have not. How's it affected you?
The effect of COVID on us would be more positive than negative, but not dramatically. It's made more businesses aware of technology adoption would be what I would say, because our system is cloud-based. It can lead to less travel, can lead to more management accountability. I think that evolution of technology adoption has been sped up a little bit, but we haven't been hit by a tidal wave, but we've certainly had more interest than what we would have had normally.
Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that it's at least affected you positively, so that's good to hear. Ultimately, what does success for SWAN look like? Where are you aiming to build the business to?
Success for SWAN is we just want to have the best bit of irrigation software in the world. We're really uniquely positioned where we don't compete with a lot of the hardware manufacturers. We've got lots of wonderful relationships and collaborations in the industry. So we just want to be the best bit of software. We want to absolutely ensure that we add value to our customers' business. And we want to make sure that we give them all the tools they need to succeed and how they want to succeed. So we're a very tailored product. So two businesses can look the same, but they're not with what they want to achieve. So understanding that business and making sure we can help them drive their goals is absolutely number one to us.
And you're obviously doing some work overseas already too. You brought up there in a couple of your examples. So how much of your business is Australia versus overseas currently? And where do you want that to end up?
Our business now is mostly Australia, but we have 3 partners in New Zealand, 2 in Africa, 1 in Fiji, 1 in Singapore. We're looking at US market entry in 2021. So we've spent the last 4 years designing, building and rolling the product out in our immediate market. And now we're at a stage where we want to sort of look at the US for market entry next year. So we're having some conversations there. And a lot of our customers are US-based corporate agriculture customers. So we've got access to some good partnerships now. So we'd like to leverage off them starting next year.
That's great to hear. Well, thank you very much. Just have one more question for you today, Tim. It's a much easier one. Who would you like to hear on the show?
There's lots of amazing speakers in the tech space now. And I think one that I've come across a few times, Paul Bassett from Seek, also associated with Square Peg VC Fund. He's actually quite inspirational, but very grounded speaker on how they run their businesses. So I think he'd be a great guest speaker.
Yep, fantastic. Square Peg's actually come up in another one of my conversations outside of the show too. And obviously they've got a huge list of businesses that they've worked with. But he could be an incredible guest for Hospopreneurs Plus, which is one of our other segments as well listeners will be familiar with. Tim, thank you very much for joining me on the program today. It's been a pleasure having you on.
Thanks a lot, James. It's been a great pleasure.
This program is hosted by James Henderson, with technical production by Jake Olver. Voiceovers were by Angus Brennan and Shim Phelan. Thanks to our distribution team, led by Stephanie Holland, and a special thanks to you for tuning in every week. This program was produced by H Media. We'll see you soon.